The moment Amanda's words echoed across the venue, the world around me seemed to fall silent. Aaron? He's just a pathetic simp who wasted 4 years chasing someone out of his league. The cameras clicked like machine guns. The reporters roared with laughter, and somewhere in the distance, I swear I heard the system's mechanical voice flatly declare, "Mission failed, system detached." I stood frozen for a moment under the cold lights of the ballroom. The same ballroom where I had once knelt, foolishly hoping for her affection. Amanda, radiant in her designer gown, laughed like she had never seen anything funnier. Brandon, standing proudly beside her, whispered something into her ear that made her laugh even harder. In that instant, the system's presence, the weight I had carried for 4 long years, lifted from my body like a heavy, invisible chain snapping apart. My phone buzzed at the exact same moment. Notification: host abandoned. No further support available. Good. The world thought this was the scene where I would break down, where I'd fall to my knees, tears streaming down my face, pleading for the love that had been dangled in front of me like a cruel joke. Even Amanda's smirk hinted at her expectation. She believed I would chase after her one last time, disgrace myself in front of the world. But instead, I smiled. A slow, cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't even angry. I was free. The crowd kept laughing, flashing their cameras at Amanda and Brandon as if they were the king and queen of the night. None of them noticed me quietly slipping my hands into my pockets, walking away from the chaos with calm steps. They didn't see the spark in my eyes, the one born not of despair, but of pure, merciless clarity. I stepped outside into the cold night air, the city lights blurring into a haze behind me. For 4 years, I had bent myself into knots trying to please a woman who never intended to love me. For 4 years, I had played the obedient puppet under the system's strings. Now both the puppet master and the stage were gone. It was time for the real show to begin. I wasn't born into hardship. Far from it. My family, the Summers, owned a decent business. Small, but stable, passed down quietly through generations. We weren't royalty in the business world, but we weren't beggars either. I grew up believing in hard work, loyalty, and patience. I thought that if you loved someone long enough, hard enough, they would eventually see you. That belief ruined me. The system appeared when I was 21, a strange voice in my head offering me a mission for true love. Chase Amanda Knight. Make her fall in love. Win her heart. Simple, the system had said. Just persistence, devotion, sacrifice. And I believed it. Amanda wasn't just anyone. She was the daughter of the Knight Corporation, a family that rose from nothing and bulldozed their way into the upper echelons of a city's elite. Beautiful, confident, untouchable. She had that kind of charm that made you think she was looking straight through you when she smiled. She had ambition burning behind her eyes, and every time she spoke, it felt like the world shifted around her. I was no fool. I knew from the start that Amanda was far beyond my reach, but the system promised me otherwise. Complete the tasks, stay loyal, win her heart, earn your reward. 4 years. For 4 years, I did everything the system ordered, organizing secret, surprise parties she didn't attend, sending flowers that ended up in trash bins, defending her name on every forum and social media platform like a faceless knight no one asked for. Taking blows to my reputation when she flirted publicly with others, laughing off rumors with a forced smile because the system assured me progress was being made. Meanwhile, Amanda used my loyalty like a ladder. Needed an escort to an event? Aaron will come running. Needed someone to cover a scandal? Aaron will take the blame. Needed a placeholder boyfriend to keep real suitors at bay? Aaron was always available. They called me a fool behind closed doors. They called me Amanda's dog in hushed, mocking tones at parties. But I swallowed it all because I thought the mission meant something. Because I thought I was fighting for love. What a joke. Amanda never cared about loyalty. She cared about leverage. As long as I danced around her like a lovesick idiot, she could play the perfect, sought-after heiress with a faithful admirer at her feet. My presence made her more desirable to others, more unattainable, more valuable. And still, I stayed. The system kept pushing, and I kept obeying, even when deep inside, a quiet voice was starting to scream. Leave! Run! Wake up! But I crushed that voice. I crushed it under loyalty, under hope, under sheer pathetic stubbornness, until tonight, until Amanda stood under the spotlight with Brandon at her side and called me a simp for the whole world to hear. Until the system, seeing no point in wasting its resources, coldly detached itself and left me to rot. But I wasn't rotting. I wasn't broken. I was waking up. Amanda thought I was obsessed with her. She thought losing the system's invisible chain would make me spiral, make me desperate enough to keep chasing her, to make a scene, to humiliate myself even further. She had no idea the chain had been the only thing keeping me restrained. Now, there was no more mission, no more orders, no more blind devotion. I looked back at the man I had been, the errand boy, the shield, the joke, and felt nothing but disgust. No more. My name was Aaron Summers, and for 4 years I had been Amanda's loyal background character. Starting tonight, I would be the one writing the story, and she wouldn't like how it ended. The transfer notification came faster than expected. I had barely stepped out of the ballroom when my phone buzzed again. An alert from my private bank. $1 billion cleanly deposited under the memo line, breakup settlement. No flowery explanations, no apologies, just money, like tossing a bone to a dog. The assistant who sent it, trembling behind the glass doors of the venue, tried to catch my eye. She must have been ordered to get my signature to finalize the transaction. For a moment, I considered ignoring her, letting Amanda stew in fear, wondering if I would reject the payout, cause a scene or worse, expose her cruelty to the media. But then I thought better of it. No, Amanda expected drama. She expected chaos. I would give her silence instead. I strolled casually across the parking lot, the cold night air cutting against my face, and approached the assistant who flinched when I came near. She held out the contract with both hands, as if afraid I would slap it out of her grip. Without a word, I took the papers, flicked my pen once, and signed my name with a neat, practiced flourish. Tell Amanda, I said, sliding the papers back toward her. $1 billion is a bargain. The assistant looked confused, but nodded hurriedly and ran off, probably relieved she had survived the encounter without incident. My phone buzzed again. Amanda, of course. Her message popped up, a carefully crafted grenade. Amanda, you really took the money. How pathetic. I thought you at least had some pride. I stared at the message for a moment, then chuckled under my breath. Pride? Where? Was her pride when she used me like a free shield against every scandal? Where was her pride when she stood on that stage laughing at the man who had once dropped everything just to make her smile? I typed back quickly. Aaron, you thought wrong. Pride doesn't pay bills. Pride doesn't buy revenge. Before she could reply, I blocked her, deleted the thread, cleared her from my contact list like she had never existed. It felt lighter than I expected. No sorrow. No lingering pain, just an overwhelming sense of freedom. The media, of course, didn't know the full story. The headlines the next morning were brutal. Top heiress dumps longtime admirer, pays him off like trash. Aaron Summers, from Loyal. Simp to billionaire bachelor overnight. Reporters camped outside my apartment, waiting for me to break down or lash out. Paparazzi followed my car. Bloggers flooded social media, speculating wildly about my motives. Was I planning revenge? Would I try to sabotage Amanda's engagement? Had I been scheming all along to take her family's money? I ignored it all. Let them talk. Their words had no power over me anymore. I spent the day quietly making phone calls, moves Amanda would never see coming. Contacts I had once neglected while I was too busy loving her were now eager to answer my calls. Investors, old friends, rivals of the eye. Knight family who had waited years for an opportunity like this. Amanda had handed me the weapon with her own hands, and now she was standing there, smiling brightly, thinking the war was already won. Poor girl, she didn't even know the battle had just begun. Late that night, while sipping a glass of whiskey in my penthouse overlooking the city, Brooke called me for the first time. "Aaron," she said lightly, her voice a breath across the line. "Congratulations, you're finally free." I didn't respond immediately. I watched the glittering lights of a city, the same city that once cheered Amanda's name, now quietly shifting, adjusting its gaze toward me. "I'm not just free," I said finally. "I'm hungry." Brooke laughed, a soft, dangerous sound. "Good, because opportunities are knocking." I tilted my head back against the leather couch, feeling that slow, dangerous heat building in my chest, the heat of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Tell me," I murmured, swirling the whiskey in my glass. "Where do we start?" The line went quiet for a second, then Brooke replied, her tone sweet and sharp at the same time. "With Amanda's empire," she said. "One brick at a time. The days after." The scandal felt strangely hollow. Even as the city buzzed around me, even as the media shifted its lens from Amanda's victory to the juicy drama of her abandoned admirer turned billionaire, I felt nothing. No anger, no regret. Just a vast, unfamiliar emptiness stretching inside me like an endless winter. I would wake up, shower, eat, attend meetings, smile when necessary, sign deals, secure partnerships. But it was mechanical, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. Like my own heart hadn't quite caught up to the reality that Amanda, her laughter, her lies, her poison, was gone. Late at night, when the city lights burned soft and golden beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, I would sit alone, swirling whiskey in a glass, asking questions no one could answer. Had I ever truly loved her? Or had I just loved the dream of her? The dream the system planted. The dream she encouraged. Every memory I dug up felt tarnished. Every smile I recalled now tasted like ash. I thought about the late nights I spent outside her apartment, just to hand-deliver papers she forgot for school. I thought about the stupid handmade gifts she never opened. The time I fought 3 drunken men outside a club because someone said something crude about her, and she didn't even look at me twice afterward. Was I ever anything more than entertainment to her? The system had dangled hope like a carrot, but Amanda had dangled cruelty like a whip, and I had danced, smiling through it all. Pathetic. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the glass, sharp black suit, strong shoulders, cold, steady gaze, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. Somewhere in the ashes of that foolish boy chasing Amanda's shadow, someone new was being forged, someone harder, colder, more dangerous. But every rebirth is painful. There were nights when the loneliness gnawed at my bones, when even breathing felt heavy, like the weight of 4 wasted years pressed against my chest. It would have been easier to give in, to drown in bitterness, to spiral into anger and self-pity, but I refused. I hadn't clawed my way out of that humiliation just to become another casualty. Instead, I let the pain sharpen me. I let every sting of memory etch itself into my skin like armor. I let every betrayal stiffen my spine, strengthen my hands, steady my aim. Amanda's laughter still echoed in my mind sometimes, but it no longer had the power to wound me. It only fueled the quiet, simmering fire growing inside. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was chasing something far bigger. And deep down, somewhere in the locked parts of my heart, there was another battle raging. Brooke, the girl who had stepped into my life with silent understanding, offering me not pity, not judgment, but opportunity, partnership, trust. I didn't know what to make of her yet. Part of me wanted to believe in her, in the steady way she spoke, in the fierce light behind her calm smile. But another part of me, the part Amanda had crushed under her heel, screamed to be cautious, to trust no one, to keep every door locked, every secret hidden. Brooke wasn't Amanda. I knew that. But after everything I had been through, knowing wasn't enough. Feeling was harder. I caught myself watching her sometimes, from across meeting tables or quiet lounges, studying the tilt of her head, the honesty in her laugh. Was she real? Or was this another carefully crafted illusion waiting to gut me? One evening, after a long day of meetings dismantling Knight Corporation's influence bit by bit, Brooke caught me staring. She didn't say anything. She just smiled faintly, handed me a new file to review, and sat beside me, close enough that I could feel her warmth, but not so close that it was invasive. She never pushed, never demanded, never asked for more than I was ready to give. It scared me more than any betrayal Amanda had ever delivered, because real kindness, after so much cruelty, feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Terrified that if you take one step forward, the ground will vanish under your feet. I set the file down and rubbed my forehead, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the war inside my own chest. Brooke must have seen it because, she said quietly, "You don't have to fight everything alone anymore, Aaron. Simple words, soft words, deadly words." I said nothing. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. Instead, I picked up the file again and flipped it open, burying myself in work, pretending not to notice the way Brooke's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, before she respectfully turned away. Some battles had to be fought alone, even the ones you secretly wished you didn't have to. I was winning against Amanda, against Brandon, against everyone who had ever laughed at me, doubted me, spit on my loyalty. But the battle inside myself, the one between the man who still wanted to believe in love and the man who had learned never to trust again, that was far from over, and it was the only war that truly mattered. It happened at the charity gala 2 weeks later. The event was supposed to be Amanda and Brandon's shining moment, a public celebration of their engagement, a show of unity between two of a city's most talked-about families. Everyone who mattered was there: CEOs, politicians, media moguls. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and laughter echoed across the marble halls. Amanda was radiant under the chandelier lights, wearing a glittering silver gown designed to catch every eye. Brandon stood beside her, smiling that easy, polished smile he had perfected for the cameras. They looked unstoppable, invincible, a golden couple untouchable by the rumors swirling beneath the surface, until I walked in. The air shifted the moment I stepped through the grand entrance, Brooke gracefully on my arm, both of us dressed in black so sharp it seemed to slice through the glitter of the room. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Flashbulbs burst against the walls. For a second, just a second, Amanda's confident mask cracked. I caught it, the slight stiffening of her shoulders, the flicker of disbelief in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to show up. She definitely hadn't expected me to show up looking like this, confident, powerful, untouchable. I met her gaze across the room and smiled. Not the simpering smile she was used to. A real smile. Cold, distant, superior. Amanda quickly recovered, clinging tighter to Brandon's arm as if to anchor herself. But the damage was already done. The cameras that had once hungered for her were now swiveling toward me and Brooke. Curious, hungry, sensing blood in the water. Brooke squeezed my hand lightly. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded once. We moved through the crowd like a blade slicing through silk, stopping briefly to greet the organizers and the biggest sponsors. Old allies of the Knight family, seeing me now, began to smile a little wider, their greetings a little warmer. Money and power recognized their own. Amanda couldn't ignore me forever. She broke first, approaching with Brandon in tow, her smile stretched too tight across her face. "Aaron," she said sweetly, voice dripping with fake warmth. "Didn't expect to see you here." I thought you hated public events after, well, everything, I chuckled, setting my champagne glass down on a passing tray. I used to, I said casually. But then I realized it's a lot more fun when you're not someone's sidekick. Brooke's mouth twitched with amusement. Brandon stepped forward, trying to salvage the moment. No hard feelings, right, Aaron? In the end, we all just want what's best for Amanda. I looked him up and down, slow and deliberate, before letting my gaze settle back on Amanda. You can have her, I said quietly. In fact, I insist. The slight flinch Amanda couldn't hide made every second worth it. Before they could recover, the host of the evening announced a surprise presentation, an award honoring new corporate alliances that had reshaped a city's business landscape. My keg. Name was called Aaron Summers, CEO, Rising Star, new strategic partnerships with major players across the city, a direct blow to Knight Corporation's fading influence. As I walked up to the stage to accept the award, applause thundered across the hall, but it was the look on Amanda's face that mattered most. Horror, disbelief, loss, she realized, standing there in her glittering dress beside a man whose foundation was crumbling, that she had bet everything on the wrong horse. The golden couple of A City had just been publicly dethroned, and I hadn't even needed to lift a finger. The fallout came faster than anyone predicted. Within 3 days of the gala, cracks began to spiderweb across Knight Corporation's polished surface. Deals Amanda had proudly paraded just weeks ago fell apart overnight. Investors pulled out quietly at first, then in a steady flood. Business partners who had once smiled politely now stopped answering her calls. Knight Corporation stocks plummeted. Rumors spread like wildfire. Brandon's reckless investments, Amanda's manipulation of public sympathy, whispers about fabricated charity donations. At first, Amanda tried to deny it. She threw glamorous parties, posted polished photos, forced smiles for the paparazzi. But no amount of lipstick could hide the rotting structure underneath. And Brandon, sensing the ship was sinking, clung harder to the image of perfection until it strangled them both. The real blow landed one rainy evening when Amanda showed up at my office. I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the rain blur the city lights when the secretary buzzed through.
Sir, Amanda Knight is here. She's demanding to see you. I didn't answer right away. I simply stared out at the world she used to own, now slipping through her fingers like sand. Send her up, I said finally, voice calm. When the door swung
open, Amanda stormed in, soaked from the rain, makeup running slightly despite her attempts to fix it. She was still beautiful. Still the woman I had once believed I loved, but not even the memories could hide how desperate she looked now. You planned all of this, she hissed, voice shaking with anger. You set me up. I turned, meeting her gaze, coolly. Funny. I thought you set me up 4 years ago. Her fists clenched at her sides. You ruined me, Aaron. No, I corrected softly. You ruined yourself. I just stopped saving you. She blinked, taken aback by the coldness in my voice. Maybe, in some twisted part of her mind, she had believed the old Aaron was still buried somewhere, waiting to be commanded. But he was dead. Amanda moved closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. We were supposed to be partners, she said bitterly. After everything, you owed me. I owed you. I laughed then, not loudly, but sharp and hollow. Amanda, the only thing I owed you was a clean break, and you got that. 1 billion, remember? She flinched. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then, in a voice so low I almost missed it, she said, I didn't think you would really leave. For a second, just a second, there was a glimpse of the girl she might have been once. Not the ice queen in designer dresses. Not the manipulator. Just a lonely woman who realized too late what she had lost. But sympathy was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. You never loved me, I said, my tone final. You loved the way I loved you. You loved being adored, worshipped, needed. Amanda's face crumpled for a fraction of a heartbeat before she hardened it again. You think you're better than me now? She spat. You think Brooke is going to be any different? I shrugged. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But at least she didn't build a throne out of my humiliation. Amanda stepped back, breathing heavily, the fight draining out of her like blood from a wound. You'll regret this, she whispered. I shook my head slowly. No, Amanda. You'll regret it. I watched her leave without another word, shoulders stiff, back straight, a queen without a kingdom. When the door shut, sealing her out of my life for good, I turned back to the window. The city gleamed below, indifferent to our little war. Brooke entered the office minutes later, holding 2 cups of coffee. She didn't ask about Amanda. She didn't even mention her. She simply handed me a cup, sat down opposite my desk, and opened her laptop. Work as usual. No drama, no manipulation, no games. For the first time in years, I realized how peaceful silence could be. But fate wasn't finished yet. A week later, the full scope of Amanda's collapse hit the headlines. Brandon, desperate to salvage his career, leaked private chats and financial documents to the media, exposing every dirty deal, every backroom betrayal Amanda had ever been involved in. In a single day, Knight Corporation stock hit rock bottom. Board members resigned en masse. Lawsuits flooded in. Amanda, stripped of her influence, her money, and her reputation, vanished from the public eye almost overnight. And me? I rose. Wang. Corporation announced a massive merger with Brooks Family Business. New headquarters, new projects, new partnerships. The same city that once mocked me now bowed when I walked into the room. At the celebration party, Brooke stood by my side, elegant and radiant. You did it, she said, clinking her glass lightly against mine. No, I said quietly. We did it. For a moment, she just looked at me, searching my face for something. Then, with a small knowing smile, she said, You're not the same man who chased after a fantasy. I'm not chasing anything anymore, I said. I'm building. Brooke leaned in, her voice soft against my ear. Good. Because I didn't fall for the boy who loved blindly. I fell for the man who learned how to see. The words hit something deep inside me, something raw and painful and healing all at once. Maybe love wasn't about devotion. Maybe love wasn't about sacrifice. Maybe love, real love, was about standing side by side, building, fighting, surviving, together. As the party swirled around us, as cameras flashed and laughter echoed, I stood there with Brooke, finally understanding what Amanda never could. You don't build a future by chasing someone. You build it by standing still and choosing the right person to stand with you. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't empty. I wasn't broken. I was ready. The real story, the real life, was just beginning. The auction was a formality. Knight Corporation's final assets, Amanda's penthouse, her vacation homes, her personal art collection, were liquidated to pay off the mountain of debts Brandon had buried them under. Their names became a joke whispered across boardrooms and lounges, another cautionary tale of pride and poor choices. I watched it unfold from a distance, never lifting a finger. I didn't need to. The world they had built on false smiles and hollow victories collapsed without my help, piece by piece, exactly as it was destined to. The final blow came when I received an invitation I never expected. Amanda's family estate, the mansion that had once been the symbol of their arrival into high society, was going on the block, and not just any sale. A public auction, open to anyone with the funds. The starting bid wasn't even close to its real value. Their desperation was that obvious. Brooke found the invitation first, sliding it across my desk during a late meeting. You're going, right? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. I tapped the edge of the envelope thoughtfully. Only if you're coming with me. The day of the auction, the room buzzed with wealthy sharks scenting blood in the water. Most, of them weren't even interested in the house itself. They just wanted a piece of the story, the right to say they owned a fragment of the once great Knight legacy. Amanda wasn't there. I had expected that. She didn't have the stomach to watch the last of her pride auctioned off like furniture, but Brandon was. I spotted him in the corner, slumped in a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, shadows under his eyes, clenching a whiskey glass like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The auctioneer started the bidding. Numbers flew through the air. I waited, watched, until the moment was right. And then, with the casual flick of a paddle, I doubled the highest offer. Silence swept the room. Brandon lifted his head, eyes bloodshot, staring at me with a mixture of hate and helplessness. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but my gaze froze him in place. He knew. Everyone knew. There was no fighting it, no saving it. The hammer fell with a deafening crack. Sold. I stood, adjusting my jacket as if I had just closed any other ordinary deal, and turned to leave without a second glance at Brandon, whose glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble floor. Outside, Brooke waited with the car door already open. She climbed in first, crossing her legs with elegant ease, watching me with those bright, knowing eyes. As we drove away from the auction house, the city sprawling out beyond the tinted windows, she asked, "Do you feel better now?" I thought about it. The easy answer was yes. The satisfying answer was yes. But the real answer was deeper. I hadn't bought that mansion for revenge, though the symbolism was sweet. I bought it to bury the last piece of Amanda's hold on me, to put an end to the story she thought she had written about me, and in its place, I would build something entirely my own. When we reached the newly purchased estate, the first thing I ordered was a complete demolition, no renovations, no preservation, no sentimental half measures. The bulldozers moved in the next morning, ripping apart the marble floors Amanda had once proudly paraded across, the crystal chandeliers she had insisted on importing from Europe, the grand staircase where she had hosted parties full of fake friends. I stood at a distance, arms folded across my chest, Brooke beside me, as the building crumbled into dust and debris. It was poetic, not flashy, not cruel, just final. By noon, all that remained was an empty lot under the open sky, a blank canvas, a new beginning. Brooke leaned against my side, her head resting lightly against my shoulder. "What will you build here?" she asked quietly. I looked out over the ruined landscape and smiled. "Something real," I said. "Something no one can take away." In the weeks that followed, Amanda tried to crawl back into relevance. A few sob stories leaked to the media, painting her as the tragic, misunderstood heiress undone by love and betrayal. They didn't work. The world had already moved on. Knight Corporation was a cautionary tale now. Amanda was a footnote. Brandon disappeared entirely, last seen boarding a flight out of the country, chased by creditors and scandal. And me? I built. With Brooke's partnership, we broke ground on a new foundation. A state-of-the-art innovation hub, a place for startups, young creators, and entrepreneurs who had once been dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. The very people Amanda would have sneered at from behind her designer sunglasses. We called it Phoenix Park, a place for rebirth. A place where falling once didn't mean you couldn't rise stronger. The grand opening was scheduled exactly 1 year from the night Amanda had humiliated me on stage. Full circle. Perfect symmetry. The day of the opening, under a sky so clear, it almost seemed unreal. I stood before the polished glass building, cutting the ribbon with a single decisive snip. Reporters swarmed, flashing cameras capturing the new face of a city's future. Not Amanda. Not Brandon. Me, Aaron Summers, and beside me, smiling with quiet pride, stood Brooke. As we posed for photos, answered questions, shook hands with investors, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure lingering at the edge of the crowd. Amanda. She wore a plain dress, No jewelry, no entourage. Just herself, small, brittle, faded. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just watched, as if finally realizing that the story she had mocked, the boy she had laughed at, had rewritten the ending without her. I gave her nothing. No acknowledgement. No bitterness. No pity. Just a man living the life she never thought he could have without her. Later that night, as the celebration wound down and the city lights shimmered like stars fallen to earth, I found myself standing on the balcony of the new building, the cool breeze tugging at my jacket. Brooke joined me silently, handing me a glass of champagne. "To the past," she said, lifting her glass. "And to its ashes," I replied, tapping mine against hers. We drank. I looked out over the city, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. Not the empty, aching silence after defeat, but the steady, grounding calm that comes from winning the battles that mattered most. I had loved and been betrayed. I had fallen and risen again. I had been mocked and I had laughed last, not because I had chased revenge blindly, but because I had chosen to let go, to rebuild, to rise higher than they ever dreamed. Amanda was gone. Brandon was forgotten. Only Brooke remained, steady, sharp, and brilliant, and me, not the Aaron they laughed at, not the Aaron they underestimated, the real Aaron. The one who learned that true power wasn't about proving yourself to others. It was about proving yourself to yourself. I slipped my free hand into Brooke's, feeling her fingers intertwine with mine naturally, effortlessly, like it was always meant to happen. A new life, a real life, built not on chasing approval, but on choosing myself first. As the stars blinked awake one by one above us, I whispered the final words that closed the chapter for good. "Let them watch," I said softly. "This time, they'll never catch up." And with that, we turned our backs on the past and stepped into the future, together.